The past year has been really interesting. We have learned a lot about Ikkari area and all the nature values that we have here and how to work with those. And now we are gathering the idea that how future Ikkari mine will be, and I think we have really great tools in our hands to actually do that.
We're not in the business of just finding ounces, we're building a mine, and you need to understand everything you can about the metallurgy, the engineering, how you would ultimately exploit those ounces.
Since the discovery of Ikkari, we've been really busy with the drilling. Lots of drill rigs flying through the site. Whenever someone has a rig available, we've almost had it.
I'm really excited to get the project going. We're making a change in the world, which is, I never thought I'd find a job in which I'm doing something quite different, doing something that really matters. We're working in the industry in a modern way, and we're making a change.
There you go. Hi, I'm Kalle Kotiaho, and I work as a senior geologist here at Rupert Resources, the Rupert Lapland project. Resource and mineralization is very continuous in Ikkari. So the mineralization cross-cuts through lithologies, and it's just really broad. It's not confined to one lithology, it's not confined to one vein or shear. It's all across the mineralized corridor. So it's a really coherent block of mineralized rock. We still have our rigs turning on site, so it's not stopping. That's the amount of drilling that we've done in the past 2.5 years approximately.
My name is Emmi-Kaisa Oxman and I work as project geologist at Rupert Resources. We are now at Ikkari drill site, and this is the deposit we found 2.5 years ago. Ikkari does have quite complex structural settings. We have Kumpuku group quartzites in the south, younger intrusives in the north, and between them there is like a package of ultramafic, really deformed rocks, including sedimentary in the crusts. Right now, doing infill drilling in the central parts of the deposit, and infill drilling is done to improve the confidence of the resource. We have developed quite a lot since we found Ikkari. We have really focused on developing the Ikkari deposit itself, from the first exploration holes we drilled here and found Ikkari to this infill drilling progress we currently have and PEA study.
The actual work that the geology team does is really great, and then on the side, the workplace is evolving. We're getting new people on the environmental side, we're getting plenty of new geologists for the exploration team, and then again we have a new person on the HR team as well. And with those new people coming in and the team getting bigger and bigger, there's lots of things to do with sustainability, human interaction and communications. And then again, stakeholder comms, we've started up with that as well. So we're getting ready for the EIA and all the stakeholder meetings that we'll be having.
The past summer has been really busy. We have been collecting a lot of baseline data from environment, and that is really important part when we are building a new mine, because environmental baseline data is something that we have to collect now. You can't collect that after you have started construction or producing the mine. We are in a good position in that sense that we started environmental monitoring already in 2019. Currently we are working with preliminary economic assessment, and alongside that we are doing environmental impact assessment program, and those are the key things for this year and will be finalized end of this year.
The goal for Ikkari is to build a low emissions, low impact mine. We're not just measuring economic metrics, we're also trying to understand the impact of each ounce of gold that we produce at Ikkari, and that's a very important thing when you're benchmarking yourself against other projects in the world. We're in St Ankula, we're outside the new Rupert Resources office. The focus is now squarely on Ikkari. We've moved to be closer to the project and we want to be visible in town, so we're integrated with the community, and look, there's advantages for being so much closer to where everyone lives. You know.
One of the things we've been doing this year is what you can see behind me, our new core logging and core storage facilities. It's supposed to be ready in end of November, and then we can move into the new facilities. Roughly 2.5 years ago, we had the first proper drill hits for Ikkari deposits in April 2020. Ever since, it's been a lot of drilling. The deposit is looking better and better all the time. The grades are okay. There isn't any nasty surprises on metallurgical side. All of our staff is Finnish and we are based in Sodankylä. All this time, this COVID-19 for the last 2 years, it was business as usual for us. We didn't have to stop working or anything. My hope for the long term is that we have like a really nice modern gold mine in Ikkari that is accepted by all the stakeholders, and it's as environmentally friendly as a mine ever can be, fulfilling all the emission requirements and all that, and it's hopefully running for the long time, giving a lot of workplaces for the local people in Sodankylä and in the surrounding villages and municipalities, and yeah, that's what I would like to see in the future.
Brilliant. Hello and welcome everyone. We're here with Thomas Creedland, Head of Corporate Development, and James Wivell, the CEO. Today is a big day for the company. They announced the inaugural PEA on Ikkari and Paatavaara. The flow at the moment will be, James will run through the presentation. Throughout that period, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop that in the Q&A section, or if you'd like to speak, there will be a Q&A section at the end of the session. We can allow people to speak. Just click the raise your hand icon and we'll let you in to have a chat. So James, do you want to kick things off and run through the update?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Peter, and thank you very much everyone for joining us this evening, if you're in Europe or obviously other times of the day elsewhere. So yeah, it's been a important week for the company, obviously announcing the PEA and really beginning to put some numbers around the discovery we made just literally 2.5 years ago, as Jukka was saying in the video there. I guess it's important to remember that the first drill hole went into Ikkari on March 31st, 2020. So it's when it started drilling. So, and it really only showed up in the base of till a few months before that. So it's we've moved this forward pretty fast. Inferred resource last year, and obviously the upgrade to that resource this year, and you're finally having some financial numbers to put around it, which is ever important for all the investors and stakeholders involved in the project. So referring to the usual caution-looking statement, lots of details about the assumptions made for resource cutoffs and things like that in this section, so that we'll be talking to. So I guess we've had this slide for a while, and this was really the aim, to find a really high quality project, and high quality, as we said, can be done in many ways, but obviously we've it's about demonstrating a project through really with Ikkari, just the sheer shape of it, the morphology of it, the fact that you have this significant deposit that can have very low costs, have a long life, over 20 years. It's in a great part of the world, and technically, the work that we've been doing and in this release, and obviously there'll be in the document itself, really de-risks that opportunity as well and gives people a lot more technical information to go on. So just the highlights, the headline was $1.6 billion as the NPV, 5% discount, and $1,650 gold. But really the real standouts for me are the internal rate of return and the short payback. Absolutely stellar, and being able to pay back that capital in the order of $400 million to get the mine up and running at the beginning in under 2 years, and then having a 20-odd year mine life after that is a really a testament to how good an asset it could be. And the cost base really are at the lowest end of the cost curve here. First 11 years really down there, almost just under $600 an ounce all-in sustaining cost, and even over the life of the mine, very competitive all-in sustaining costs compared to others under $800. So yeah, some really nice sort of headlines to the project. So the resources, obviously we came out with a resource last year on Ikkari itself, just under 4 million ounces. This year, the total resources for the group now are just over 5 million ounces. And yeah, it's we brought back in part of ARA to that, and we'll discuss that as part of the presentation. And also put our maiden resource out on Hain Essential. Important to note, Hain Essential isn't in the mining inventory for the PEA. We still need to do more work on that deposit. And obviously we're still drilling quite significantly on the area immediately around Ikkari and some of our other exploration targets. So we would like to think this isn't the end of the resource statements for the project. So, but just in terms of the numbers, you know, the key thing for us, you know, we've spent about $11 a resource ounce up until now in terms of the acquisition and finding costs. This takes you across the right-hand side, you know, the actual NPV on each recovered ounce is in the order of $374. So that gives you a, you know, that's what this business is about, is finding, you know, significant deposits for a relatively low cost and then demonstrating what value they could have on every ounce into the future. So that's really the essence of what these preliminary economic assessments are meant to do. We've transferred 84% of that inferred resource into the indicated category so far. We'll be doing more infill drilling where we have been doing that as part of our planned 70,000 meters of drilling from the summer just gone through to the end of spring next year. So yeah, we'll hopefully convert more of that. And, you know, as I said, we've got 6 to 8 targets that are going to be tested over this winter drill season specifically. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail. But you know, there's a great stat here that actually outside of Ikkari, our average drill hole depth is in the order of 130 meters depth. So really just scratching the surface. Ikkari currently is drilled down as far as about 800 meters, just very much in the center of the deposit. So to that point, you know, this is, look at this chart. Ikkari is obviously on the south side here. But, you know, what are we going to be doing over the next few months to potentially grow that resource base? But also, it's important to do this work now so we understand what else could possibly come into future studies. So we've talked about Hain Essential in this release. We first drilled Ikkari North, which was importantly our first drill discovery in this area where there wasn't base of till. We've always talked about our approach and a bit the success we've had by using the base of till drilling first and then drilling beyond it. That's the first one that's not from that. It's basically based on some deep geophysics we've been doing. So there's that one to follow up. We have a series of other deep geophysics or deep targets to follow up at the project. But yeah, back to Haina South, where we have some of the highest grade hits that we've had, but the highest grade hits in this area. But there's still plenty of open space here. And look, one of the challenges at the moment is getting the drilling done to find where we put infrastructure and stuff like that. So that's going on at the moment too. But that's not to take away from Ikkari itself, but I'll leave that to a slide further on and what potential upside is there. So in terms of the production summary, in the order of 72 million tons processed over the life of the project, it's a 3.5 million ton per annum plant planned to be built at the Ikkari site. Key drivers of the project is a very low strip ratio in the open pit phase of this project. No exception in the first couple of years, you're less than 2 to 1. The average grade is still double in terms of process grade. Once you've taken dilution and minor recoveries into account, it's still double what the average is in this industry. And then the metallurgical recoveries are very high at 95%. So we get this really nice production profile in the order to 200 to 220,000 ounces a year over the life of the project, which is absolutely great. And we recover in total gold 4.2 million ounces. So all of those things, that's really the sort of the backstop to the project, and then repeating the costs here that were in the headlines there, but cash costs in the order of $500 an ounce in the early years. So just sort of revisiting the big metrics that drive the NPV, the capex 405 million, and then sustaining capital for 400 million over the life of the project. The undiscounted cash flow line there is 2.7 billion over the life of this project, and there's a great chart in a couple of slides that I'll show you. So a bit more detail on the costs themselves. On the left-hand side, the actual breakdown of the OPEX. Obviously, mining is a key part of that. It's a open pit mine for the first 11 years, and the underground starts in year 10, and then carries on for another 10 years after that until the close of the operation. And then the part of our operation is envisaged to come on at a similar time and feed into the feed concentrate into the Ikkari plant over the latter years. But look, I think other key elements, obviously processing costs are very competitive in the project, but we know it's a very thorough PEA. It's taken us a while to put together. We really have focused on making sure that we have a really representative set of costs on a per ton basis. And then on the capex side, look, the initial capex of $400 million is a little bit. It actually is a little bit more on a per ton basis. If you say 3.5 million tons, and we're spending a little bit more than most projects on capex. Again, just trying to be as realistic as possible given the environment that we're in. Yeah, the key elements of that are obviously the process plant itself, but also making sure on the environmental side, making sure we got significant allocation of funds towards water treatment, a very sensitive area for that, and making sure we've got initial money in for closure bonds and also a reasonably healthy contingency in there as well, in terms of, because there's still plenty of things to be developed through the latter stages of the engineering side. In the sustaining capital side, you have some of the underground development coming into that. That's one of the key drivers, and obviously part of our capex for the development there, and obviously the usual sustaining capital that comes into these projects over its life. So we've put out some sensitivities here to give you a better sense on some people don't want to use 5% discount rate. Well, the numbers are here in this presentation to look at, and that's posted on the website. So you can see at higher discount rates, but also the sensitivity to capex and opex. But as you can quick glance at numbers, if you just look at the IRRs, it's a very robust project, even when you start applying sensitivities to it. And why is that? Really, that comes back to the geology and the deposit itself. It is this large, cohesive mineralized body. It is unlike a narrow vein or a high waste to ore strip ratio deposit. That by its very morphology, its nature, that's what drives these lower costs. So just in terms of the production summary over the life, it just shows it year by year here. So in the around 200,000 ounces a year, some really high years just before we go underground, well up towards 280. Year 5 there is over 250,000 ounces, and you can see where the part of our production comes in and towards the back end as we restart that operation. Read in there, and sort of forwarding a question, why doesn't it come earlier? It's we're really trying to, with the economic studies, we'll always look at the highest margin ounces at the front of the operations to ensure that you have the best return. And you can see that in these free cash flows profile of the project. The first 6 years here, over $200 million of potential free cash flow out of this asset, and still some very healthy levels beyond that as well. So, and cumulative, you reach this $2.7 billion at 1650 gold. So where does the project sit in the industry in terms of the cost profile? Well, right to the left-hand side here really is towards the lower end of certainly the first quartile of costs. And even in a corporate sense, if you layered on exploration to those costs and continuing exploration, you should still be in that bottom quartile. So very attractive asset in the industry. And then just looking at it compared to some of the other development projects that are around at the moment, and these are mostly independently owned development projects by Canadian listed companies, but a couple of Australians. But just looking at that ratio of NPV to capex, my background, as many of you know, is actually as a fund manager in the sector, investing into early stage exploration, development, and obviously production companies. But it's key to have that really high ratio of NPV to capex, because that's what really guarantees your return. If someone just offers you a study that says, oh, we're going to spend $1 billion and we might make $1 billion, that's not that attractive. It's about, we spend in the order of $400 million up front, and the valuation is 1.6 billion. So it's easy to do the maths on that. And then just looking at it on an MPV per ounce, I mean, this is, for me, is again a key way to compare projects. It doesn't matter how much, a lot of projects might produce more ounces than Ikkari in a particular year, but you really need to understand how much money they're making on each ounce. So in the Ikkari in the first 11 years, and even Ikkari over the long term, it's right up there with the highest margin on every ounce. So look, and our said at the beginning, our point here was to show what the potential value was on the ounces we've discovered already, and hopefully we'll find more ounces that could have a similar profile into the future. So to that point, just going back to Ikkari and the deposit, this is just an image of the block model. Really, a couple of things here. The highlights here are holes that we've drilled since the resource cutoff in May 31st of this year. Probably the most noticeable one being one that we put out in September, which is well beyond the resource block model. So one of the key focuses for this year is to get more drilling at depth. You'll see on the left-hand chart, the grey line there is our meters drilled, falling as you get deeper. So we do need to do more drilling at depth within this deposit. And with that, we'll be taking more drilling off down to the east here at depth to see if we can continue to chase these ounces further out here, and this structural zone that heads off this way. So yes, by the time we get to the end of the season and get to the thinking about a model for the PFS, the next stage, we'd like to be in a better position with a lot more drilled meters at depth. And again, this is just another way of looking at just another image, just sort of matching up to old press releases that we've put out to give you a sense of that. But this is this new hole. This is obviously the core of the deposit, which is a good way to look at the way it sort of drives some of the value from the open pit, this really high grade zone at the surface. But look, we just haven't done a lot of drilling down here. So that's the next task for the team, as well as the satellite or near regional exploration programs that are going on. Some images to give you a sense of how it looks. That's the deposit just overlain on the open pit for a view, and then looking at it in terms of where the underground structure comes into this. So I said at the beginning, actually the open pit there's a number of stages, but the early stages here in terms of the incremental strip ratio, it's 3.6 over the life of the project. But those first two stages, incredibly low strip ratios. In the first one, you are right into very good grade material from the beginning. So again, that's a big driver of it. The underground has been modelled as a sub-level cave. We're still looking at other methods, potentially large-scale long-hole open stoping might be something else we look at. But at the moment, we have the underground developed independently of the open pits with declines from the surface. And a big driver of that is, well, partly because we can't put them in the open pit the way it advances, but also we want to be in a position where we could use conveyor haulage down those conveyors. We're not particularly deep down those declines. We're not particularly deep at the underground. It starts at like 270 meters vertical. So it's a very efficient and low emissions route to extract the material from the underground. And our whole aim of this, and we'll be demonstrating that through the PFS stages, is demonstrate how this could be not only a very, very good gold mine and cost effective, but also a very low emissions project into the future. And another big driver of that is just the simplicity of the metallurgy at this deposit. This process flow sheet that we put in front of me is, it is absolutely sort of off the shelf. Effectively, it's no different to many projects out there that have already been built, and none of the individual pieces of equipment are particularly unique. You crush the rock, you mill it. We have a large component that comes out through gravity, and that goes straight to its own circuit and through to the gold room. And then the rest of the material goes through a flotation circuit. There we take 90% of the mass is then removed and goes to tails, flotation tails, and dried and put on a co-disposal facility. And then just 10% is taken into the CIL circuit. So again, it's a really efficient way of trying to reduce the mass down. So when you're focusing on your gold recovery, that you have a much smaller circuit, and reduces your capex, obviously, because you don't so much up front, but also makes your whole back end a lot more efficient. And that's been the plan throughout this. And then the waste products we produce, both the waste from the mine and the waste from this, really, when they are pretty much all acid neutralizing, apart from the amount that comes out of the CIL tailings, which is a very small percentage, and we're going to aim to put that into a co-disposal tailings facility. And so there's a lot of work going on now in terms of that test work to do that. But it's again, key thing, keep it simple. So this is a layout as we see it at the moment anyway. So you have the open pit to the western side here, a large co-disposal facility to the north, the simple plant and ROM pad and water retention facilities to take up any runoff water or contact water to the site, and it's all treated before it is discharged from the site. So, but we're all very much inside our own license boundaries, and we have a small license here that goes to the main road. So just to remind people, we're about 5 km from the main road between Kittilä and Sodankylä, the 2 regional towns. I put that on a map earlier, and we're 9 kilometers from a substation which feeds into a wind farm on the main power line across the region. So that's where we'd be taking our power from. So, and that links straight into the grid in northern Finland and in northern Scandinavia, where a lot of the power is from renewable sources, either hydro or wind, or low CO2 through nuclear.
And so just to remind people, to get resources into a 43-101 report, they have to be resources, and they have to be able to develop with your on ground that you own or have control of. So it's kind of important. So this mine plan is just assumes everything takes place on our land that we hold.
So I've probably just done this point, but it's about tapping into this regional power surplus that's going to be in this part of the world. I think it's a great opportunity to have a project that's in this environment and make a significant impact to the overall emissions process. So getting a bit onto the sort of development path of this, looking at the how we de-risk it and how we go through the permitting profile. This is quite a detailed matrix of from where we are today with the PEA. This week we're having our EIA program meetings with the authorities, along with a lot of stakeholder meetings. There's one going on right now at one of the villages near the project, and look, it's a process that you go through. It's very well, the pathway is very well known in Finland and well regulated, so we know what we need to do to get through that. Just like I think I described it in an interview that we need to know how to really do exploration well. It's about now having to really understand how to go through the permitting process right and collect the right information and to feed it in there. So it really goes side by side. As we get more technical information, we provide more environmental information, and that is what's used to do the environmental impact assessment. And then ultimately, by the time we get to really understanding the project, we will be in a position then to do our environmental permit application after all the public review period of the EIA process itself. Just a note on part of Ara and how that works in. Obviously, it's in the pathway. We've had this was, I guess, the founding asset of Rupert Resources, and we hadn't put a new resource out since April 2018. So this is an update to that resource and a significant increase in the ounces. And look, I think for us, it's still a great asset, a great satellite deposit to the Ikkari project. And we will continue to do work over that. You'll just be upfront, it won't be probably in the next pre-feasibility study stage project, because we are going to focus very much on Ikkari, because that's the drive of the first 10 years of the project. So, and the permitting side of it. So, but look, it's a great asset to have as well in the pipeline. So in terms of catalysts coming up for this year, obviously there's all the development information that's going on around the Ikkari project. So infill drilling that we're doing at the moment, portion of our drilling will be starting to work on the PFS and the EIA, and a lot of optimization work. So this is our first take of what it could look like. So there's a lot more work to be done over the next 12 months and 2 years, and ongoing through further studies. Exploration absolutely key. We're still an exploration company, really, so we're still exploring at depth extensions, still looking for more potential around Ikkari, and then looking at whole Area 1 discoveries and the potential for some of those to become satellites. And then the bigger picture, you know, we have 600 odd square kilometers land package now, vast holding in the belt, and we have been doing a lot of work over the last 2 years doing some of that regional exploration, building up that knowledge base, and then going and focusing on where we think could be the next discovery. So, and then on this whole strategic side, look, we'll be doing a lot of work on the emissions profile of the project, because I think that's absolutely key differentiator to this project to others, as well as the economics that we presented. And then there's all the land use planning, engagement, and working with authorities, local authorities and municipalities on that side. And then obviously, you know, we always open-minded company to corporate opportunities and any synergies in the region. And with that, and I guess we've always had this slide, and we're going to continue to focus on value creation and returns. And that's really, go back to that slide, $11 ounce to discover. Let's demonstrate what those ounces could be worth, $374 an ounce. That's really, you know, that's our jobs, but also it's to do that and bring into all the other elements that come into that on the environmental side, social side, permitting, stakeholder relations, and demonstrate that this could be a really outstanding development project of the future. So with that, Peter, I'm happy to hand it back, and we can go to Q&A if you like.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. Thanks, Tom. Everyone in the audience, if you would like to participate in Q&A, you can send a message in at the moment, or you can raise your hand and we can allow you to speak and ask a question directly. Whilst questions are coming in, James, what does the timeline to production look like at the moment if all goes well?
Yeah, look, I think we would aim to be in a position, or we're aiming to get heavily into our EIA process, which really drives that timeline. That's a 2-year process in terms of the program, and then submitting the EIA, and then having the public review period on the back of that. So, you know, in our best case scenario, we would have the permits in hand in 2025, be able to develop the project or construct the project in the years following that, and over a couple of years following that. So that's give you a sense that at this point, knowing what we know today.
And if another discovery is made, how does that affect things? What are the next steps? Does that just include in the new PFS next year, or does the whole mine plan completely change depending on discovery?
I think look, it's quite hard to compete with the value, as said, the value optimization work we've done now. If we found something as good as the top part of Ikkari, well, that would be a great situation to have. And then you might think about changing the scale of the project. But what we've been trying to do is work out what is the most optimum in scale. That's why, you know, we've been back and through this a few times, and we've come to about 3.5 million tons per annum. I think it's, you know, if there's other discoveries, they would potentially fit into that. And we really want to try and, or we'll be trying to work out, and that's why we're doing this exploration so aggressively over this winter, is to, in a really simple way, so you want to build the best house you can possible and then enjoy living in it. It's another way to think about it. But, you know, build a really good mine once and then just enjoy the returns that come out of that over a long period of time. And that really works for our investors, but also all the other stakeholders. You're generating jobs for multi-generational jobs potentially, and that's pretty key to getting your permits and your license to operate ultimately.
Okay. We've got a question coming from John Frosniak. Is the tailings area the existing one on site or greenfield?
This whole Ikkari site is developed at a new project site. So I'll just use a map here just to remind people where things are. So the part of our site is up here. That's the original site. The Ikkari project site is about 20 kilometers to the west of that, and it's at 5 k's off the road and just near this power line. So it'd be all a brand new site. When part of our is developed, it would use its existing tailing site expanded.
Brilliant. Perhaps you could just run us through the exploration program for next year. I know you touched on it within the presentation, but how many meters are you looking to conduct throughout 2023, and how much of that is infill at Ikkari? How much of that is regional exploration? How much of that is testing the extension that you're looking at to the northeast? Perhaps you could give us a bit more of a breakdown.
Yeah, so we've talked about 70,000 meters, so about 22,000 meters of that is infill at Ikkari, just to continue upgrading the resource. I'd say on top of that, in terms of Ikkari and satellites, there's probably another 30 or 40,000 meters that sits on that side as well, and that gives you a sort of 20% of the budget for other exploration outside of that. We always have kind of one drill rig allocated to the exploration team just to go and test targets all the time. So that gives you a sense of that. And I put this plot image up because just to remind people, this is area one, sort of this area down here where all the new discoveries are. But look, we are still running exploration programs over the entire, the original 20-kilometer long structure, which is all the way up here back towards Partavara, and even some areas around the Partavara project. We're still running exploration programs there too, as well as our broader license package. So it's quite it's quite spread, but at the same time, over this winter you will see a lot of drilling in and around Ikkari, because we know it's about optimizing the parameters for any future development.
Yeah, so I mean, I asked Charlie that the question about so Paul's just asked a question about what other drills what kind of proportion of targets are on sort of the Ikkari block and what are elsewhere. So I mean, I think when you roll back and look at how we discovered Ikkari, Ikkari's first the first base till hole was in January, and then we drilled it at the end of April. So there's that kind of hole, there's always there's 6 to 8, there's probably 2 or 3 targets there that we maybe haven't identified yet, that come through in the base of till, and I guess we'll explore the same way that we always have, which is to basically allocate maybe 1,500 meters, 5 holes or so into a new anomaly or target, and test that, and then if it still works, then we'll carry on drilling. And that's kind of really what how we got to Ikkari. That's how we ended up drilling 3,000 meters at Ikkari. Every time we drilled a hole, it needed more, so because it got getting bigger. So that's kind of how the way that we think about exploration.
Yeah. Brilliant. There was another question from Paul here. How much condemnation drilling is needed?
It's we've been doing that for the last couple of months, on and off, with one or two rigs. So it's about I think we have about 5,000 meters of that. The other condemnation drilling or other drilling program outside of this is surface auger drilling and drilling the till and till interface and those projects. So that's probably in addition to that, but it's probably a couple of thousand meters to that.
Okay. Just looking at the all-in sustaining costs, going back onto the economics, obviously it's in the first quartile in terms of what global deposits out there. What's the main drivers for such a low all-in sustaining cost?
I should probably leave it on that one for that. I guess it just comes back to this whole point that it's a relatively simple project, Peter, because your processing is relatively simple. It's not refractory. You don't have any complications there. So that in itself, keeps your processing costs well managed. And then look, just the shape of that deposit, and it's maybe this one, it's very broad. It's like 150 meters wide in places. So just imagine if you're just mining that down, you're recovering a huge amount of ounces for every meter you descend. So this chart on the left is important because, and we state at the beginning, gold deposits aren't created equally, and this is a relatively small footprint for a gold deposit. Actually, it doesn't have a huge long strike, but there's a lot of ounces within a small footprint. So when you mine the open pit, you're recovering a lot of ounces vertically as you go down. I mean, some average gold deposits can be in the order of 2,000 ounces a vertical meter. That just pays for going down. It doesn't give you a profit. This is in some places up to 14,000 ounces a vertical meter. So that's the real driver, Peter, to be honest. You don't have to mine a lot of waste to recover the ore.
I think it's quite well. I think it's 2.5 times the average. Open pit grade. When you look at sort of 40 million ounces of production from in the senior producers, they are mining a gram per ton in some of those big open pits. So it's grade is king. Simple processing, and I think just the other point to make is that we haven't been very aggressive in our assumptions. Our power cost is quite conservative. So I think there's room there as well to improve.
Brilliant. Another question from Paul: what intervals are your levels on the SLC underground?
Good question, Paul. In the order of 30 meters at this point in time.
Maybe James, you could, and Tom, maybe you could run us through. Obviously, this doesn't necessarily have to be the way that you submit the mine plan. What other methods of mining processing, or even how could this mine look? What other ways are you really looking to extract this that might be feasible?
But as part of our EIA process, you have to continue to look at other options of how you'll develop the project. But look, there's obviously the obvious, smaller open pit, bigger open pit potentially, but and then you change the underground methods how you do that. So I think that there are obviously some obvious things that we will continue to look at, and as we drill more at depth, we might, let's see how that underground shapes up. Maybe it's a portion of it SLC, portion long hole open stoping, or you go to one or the other. But it's about learning more and optimizing that over time. On the processing side, we are still looking at the other methods. We'll see, depending on how things evolve. That I think we've done quite a lot of work. I mean, on the met side, we're into our sort of 4th round of met work now generating bulk samples to do waste test work and things like that. So a lot of the it might change, but it doesn't. We feel as though we've optimized that quite well so far. I think that the key differentiator is probably more on the waste side, how we manage that, and also whether we get the satellites coming into it, to be honest with you.
Okay. Another question from John: after gravity gold is removed, what is the deportment of the remaining gold?
So the gold, I'm just going to go to the process part. So it's basically gold associated with pyrites, but it's not. It's basically at that grind size, even 175 microns, you can liberate that gold from that. So the flotation plant actually just also recovers fine free gold as well. It's sort of hybrid one. So you're effectively floating gold and pyrite in that stage into that concentrate that goes into the CIL circuit. So, but that's the main element.
But it's non-refractory, just to make that.
It's non-refractory, just to be clear. Yeah, the gold is either on fractures within the pyrite or just on the outside of the pyrite. So there's the 95 to 98% recoveries is a key thing. You could just grind the stuff to 175 microns and bulk cyanide it if you wanted to, but that would seem silly to not take out waste product and when you can do so easily by flotation.
Good. Okay, another question from Paul: is the mill designed with the potential for future base metal circuit being added and potential expansion?
We haven't designed it with a base metal circuit at this point in time. Obviously, Hain Essential acknowledged that has some copper in the deposit, so we haven't put that into this process design. It will be looked at when we start going into the PFS engineering and see how that would fit into that. And then regards expansion, well, it will have its own potential expansion, just to sort of through higher utilizations or loading up SAG mills, not to get too technical, and start maybe putting some more steel in them. So you could certainly, it will have inbuilt potential to be expanded. But the idea actually is to, as I said, really is to right size it, that you don't have to go and you don't necessarily need to expand it, get it the right size from the off, to be honest.
Okay. Just a question from mine. I know it's something I've asked before, but in terms of the till, I mean, what work can you do to optimize sort of removing that as strip and potentially converting gold, which is in the till? Do you have any sort of plan of action to potentially incorporate that into the PFS?
Yeah, look, at this winter we're going to do an auger drilling program over the top of the Ikkari deposit. I guess maybe just trying to think of a decent image for that. So
just the uninitiated. So currently in the current mine plan, the till is just assumed to be waste. So, and the reason for that is that we haven't been able to get a representative sample of that the till in a diamond drill hole. So yeah.
The issue being that because it's a structurally complex deposit, you don't go into fresh rock after the till. You end up in this weathered bedrock. So and the representative samples we can't get from the till, and we can't also get from the weathered bedrock, and we haven't been able to recover those with the diamond drilling, even though we've tried a number of different methods. So the idea is with this auger drilling is to go through and collect more representative samples through sort of a more bulk sampling method, and that will be able to give us a better definition of where the till ends and where the base rock starts, and also get us some assay data from that interface and the weathered bedrock. So but say anything that we couldn't recover and couldn't get an assay from at the moment is classified as 0 in the model, and hence is classified as waste in the mining.
Brilliant. Okay. No further questions from the audience. One of the last questions I had for you, James and Tom, is what's keeping you awake at night at the moment?
A lot less now. We've got to this stage. I think these just to get to this stage on a project of this scale, it takes a huge amount of engineering work and studies. We're having I guess, I think. So I guess there's a lot less, but then I would say we have a whole swarm of studies going on right now in terms of waste test work, other studies on, we'll be doing other studies on the hydrology of the deposit, working out that. So there's always a lot to keep you awake, but certainly sleep a bit better now this is behind us.
Well, I mean, it's the unknowns that keep me awake at night. It's just the stuff you don't know about, and so the further you go down, the better. I think so.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it in that call with you, Peter, we spoke the other day. Look, we've aimed to be as thorough and transparent as possible with the information through the exploration phase, and we aim to carry on that through this more detailed engineering phase and make sure we provide the market and all the stakeholders with the information about the project and carry on being transparent about it. So that's all you can do, really.
Good stuff. Okay, well, gents, thank you for your time. Unless there's any other questions, congratulations on the results, and I'm sure if anyone would have any further questions after this, they can reach out via email or through the website, and I'm sure a member of the team will be able to get back to you.
Yeah, email address is on the back of the presentation if anyone has any follow-up questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time. Much appreciated.
Okay, cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.